The morning crowd moved like a slow tide across Buckingham Palace's golden gates. Tourists snapped photos. Children giggled. Pigeons danced around crumbs. And among them stood a man who didn't fit. He wasn't dressed like a tourist. He wasn't holding a phone. He just stood, still, tired. Gray coat, frayed cuffs, beaten shoes, a face aged beyond its years. Nobody noticed him, except one man. Corporal Thomas Reed, 37, stood at his post in full ceremonial uniform, his eyes forward, his muscles locked. But somewhere, in the back of his trained mind, he saw the man, and something about him felt familiar. For 5 straight days, the man in the coat returned, always at 10:17 a.m., always standing near the east gate, always silent. He never took photos, never spoke. He just looked at the guards. One morning, a teenage tourist tried to interview him on TikTok. "Hey man, what are you doing here every day? Are you like a super fan?" The man smiled faintly, then shook his head. "I'm waiting." "For what?" He paused. "For someone who never came home." And then he walked away. On the 7th day, a photo went viral. Not because of what was posted, but because of what was accidentally captured. An American tourist uploaded a video titled, "British Guard Blinks and Freaks Me Out, LOL." But what people noticed wasn't the guard. It was the background. In the far corner of the frame, the man in the gray coat had pulled out something from his jacket. An old, folded black and white photo. 2 boys, one in a Royal Navy uniform, the other in a Queen's Guard tunic, arms slung over each other's shoulders. The caption, "George and Michael, 1952. The internet did what it does. They zoomed, they analyzed, they speculated, and someone found a match. George Holloway, MIA 1952, presumed lost. Michael Holloway, Royal Guard, KIA 1955. But the man in the gray coat, he wasn't either of them. He was someone else. Day 8. Corporal Thomas Reed had faced bomb scares, drunken stag parties, and even a tourist who threw a pigeon feather at him once. But nothing unnerved him like the man in the gray coat. That morning, he stood closer than ever, just outside the rope. In his hand, the old photo again. And then, he did something no one ever does at the palace. He spoke to the guard. "You look just like him." Reed didn't flinch. "My brother. He wore that uniform. But I wasn't there when he died." Silence. "I was the older one. Should have gone first." Still, Reed didn't move. "Can't fix the past, can you?" The man stepped back. And for the first time in Reed's career, his grip shifted on the rifle. Only slightly. But enough. He had heard him. That evening, after the change of guard and the courtyard emptied, Reed did something he never did. He didn't go straight back to the barracks. He sat on a bench across the street and waited. At 7:08 p.m., the man returned. Same coat, same shuffle. But this time, he stopped when he saw Reed. Reed spoke first. "You were there this morning." The man nodded. "Sorry. I didn't mean to distract." "You didn't." They sat in silence for a moment. Then, "George and Michael," Reed said. "Were they yours?" The man hesitated. "My brothers." "Both?" He nodded. "They never came back." "You served?" "No," he said. "I ran." Inside the palace archives, dusty and dim, Reed returned later that week, on his day off. He had pulled a favor with a clerk. He once helped lift a broken printer. He was looking for anything. George Holloway, Michael Holloway brothers, in arms or in blood. What he found was worse than a missing file. He found a closed one. Unclaimed Noak, Holloway, M. Next of kin. Not verified. Last contact, unknown effects. returned to storage status, deceased in service. There was no mention of George, and nothing linking them to any living family. Whoever that man was, he was erased from the system. But Reed now knew, and he couldn't ignore it. Reed found him again 2 days later, sitting on a bench in St. Mary's Public Hospital courtyard. This time, the man wasn't alone. A nurse hovered nearby. A clipboard was strapped to his lap. His real name was Henry Holloway. Age 89. Diagnosis: early-stage dementia. He had no known relatives. He had one request when admitted. "Can I see the guards again?" Reed sat beside him. "You came to see Michael, didn't you?" Henry nodded. "And George?" "George was never supposed to be there. He enlisted under my name, said I wasn't strong enough, took my ID, my uniform. I never saw him again." Reed sat, stunned. "He died in your place?" Henry's eyes welled up. "He died trying to protect what I ran from." The next morning, Henry returned again, this time in a wheelchair, accompanied by 2 nurses and an umbrella. It was pouring rain. Still, he sat there, waiting. He held nothing but the photo, and his old dog tag, still scratched, still his. Tourists passed. Few noticed him. One tried to offer coins. He waved them away, until the crowd parted for the changing of the guard, and Reed saw him again. This time, he moved, a step forward, against regulation. He lowered his rifle slightly, not to surrender, but to salute. A salute not to the flag, but to a man who carried the burden of his brother's name. It took 48 hours for the story to explode. A local videographer had filmed the moment. The YouTube title? "Guard Salutes, Dyin' Brother of Fallen Soldier." I cried. 24 hours, 400K views, 48 hours. 1.7 million views. 7 days, 6.4 million views. And counting clips were translated to Spanish, Turkish, Japanese. TikTok edits with violin music. Tweets from military veterans. "That's not breaking formation. That's keeping your humanity." People demanded to know more. And when they learned Henry was the last surviving Holloway, letters poured in. From soldiers, widows, children who'd lost uncles and never knew their names. A week after the video's explosion, a sealed envelope arrived at the hospital's reception desk. It bore a royal insignia. Inside, a medal, polished, untouched, and a handwritten note: "To Henry Holloway, on behalf of those who never returned, and the brothers they left behind. For your silence, for your burden, for your courage, too long unrecognized. No name signed, only a seal. Buckingham Palace." Henry wept. 3 days later, palace security was redirected. A single ceremonial post was moved back 10 feet. Why? To allow one wooden bench to be placed just beyond the rope line. A plaque was mounted beside it. For the brothers who weren't forgotten, for those who watched and waited. The bench would become a place of silence. Children would sit there, veterans, even off-duty guards. Reed saw at once from his post, months later. An elderly woman placed a poppy there. No cameras, no press. Just thanks. CNN, BBC, Vice, all sent requests. They wanted the story, the full one. Henry refused every time. "Some stories aren't for sale," he told a nurse. "Some stories are for saluting." He gave away the medal to a 12-year-old boy who had lost his uncle in Afghanistan. Said it would mean more in younger hands. In February, Henry passed quietly in his sleep. No grand ceremony, no press release. But when word reached the barracks, Corporal Reed requested an unscheduled watch. At dawn, he stood alone, full dress. rifle gleaming, facing the bench. No crowd, only pigeons, and the sunrise over the palace. He saluted, and stayed that way for 5 full minutes. Unmoving, unshaken, unordered, just human. A month later, a second plaque was added to the bench, smaller, simpler. Henry Holloway, brother, watchman, witness. Children would later ask, who was he? And guides would say, he wasn't a soldier. He was something rarer, a man who waited for one more salute. On the next Remembrance Day, a new tradition began. One guard, just one, would pause during the changing of the guard and give a single salute, facing the bench, every year. No words, only the sound of footsteps and memory. Because sometimes the most powerful help is not what you do. It's who you wait for. The video has now passed 11.2 million views. Still rising. But Henry Holloway? He only saw the numbers once. And his response? If even one brother finds peace because of this, then I finally showed up when it counted.